This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to a new Zeta report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. My name is Andre. I'm with USA EBN, and we are joined monthly by Nancy Leader from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, are you there?
I am. I'm so excited to be here. So much is happening. The scripted drama, the plate movements have picked up the pace, starting with the Bali quake that just happened about 2 days ago. Before we get into this, let me just quickly read our disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do next in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. Well, another big quake in Bali, right there, where the Indonesia plate, the Sunda plate is being pushed under the curve of that big Indo-Australia plate. And where they said is 6.9, which they always do. They drop it down just under, so that statistically it's not a 7, it's only a 6.9. But according to the Zetas, in the opinion of the Zetas, earthquakes are being dumbed down by 2 magnitude points, so that's a magnitude 9 there. And it's starting up again. You can clearly see the biggest bunch of quakes, on the graph yesterday. So what does this mean? It means that the scripted drama, or the 7 of 10 plate movements, as the Zetas have described them, is starting up again, heating up. Now, we are here just reporting history. I'm just relaying historical facts, things that are in the geography that this is not disputed. But when the Zetas say the 7 of 10 plate movements, and it sounds like their prediction, all they're saying is we're going to see a lot of this happening, and picking up the pace. They didn't describe something that had been going on in history, so that's not a Zeta prediction. It's a Zeta prediction that they was going to pick up the pace in 2010, and it did, and it still is, following this scripted drama. What is
Real quick,
scripted
Nancy?
drama? Yeah.
I was just going to clarify for our new listeners out there, the 7 of 10 is basically a timeline or intervals of things that would happen before and during the pole shift. So I guess the history on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the history on this is somebody asked through the Zeta Talk chat where we're at before 2010. I think it was 2009. Where somebody asked a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody asked a question, where are we at on the progression of the pole shift? And you can, so 7 of 10 means something.
And they said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we? And they said, right now we're at a 2. If you assume that 10 of 10 is the pole shift, the hour of the pole shift, 9 of 10 is the last weeks, which lasts 7.3 weeks, where are we? And from 2010 up 8 to 2010, we finally arrived at the 7 of 10, which is still ongoing, but it overlaps now with the 8 of 10. Which 7 of 10 is plate movement, 8 of 10 is a lot of sociological changes, which are ongoing, with immigration and panic and flooding and more wobble, more visibility, etc. So we're in there. The scripted drama is when the geology of the Earth, where the plates have moved in the past, dictates future movements. The Zetas thus predicted how our plates would move during their predicted pole shift in the near future. But this is basically saying, when subduction is already occurring, like along the spine of the Andes in South America, where the Pacific plates are shoving under, more of that would happen. It wouldn't go the other way, where the Pacific plates ride up over South America. So it's scripted because it's written in the geology of the Earth. First, India plunges under the Himalayas, lifting the plate it lies on at New Zealand. This allows South America to roll its top part to the west into the Pacific. This tears the Atlantic further apart, allowing Africa to slip into the South Atlantic and drop its eastern side into the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the Eurasian plate is stretched, ripping a new inland bay up from the Gulf toward the Ural Mountains. Meanwhile, the North American continent, which has a flat top and cannot roll, is forced into a diagonal and rips up along the New Madrid fault line. Are there signs of such a trauma in our recent past? Boy, is there. India is considered a continent because in the past it was a piece of Pangea and floated over to where it is hammering into the great Eurasian continent now at Tibet. This piece of Pangea houses both India and Australia on what is called the Indo-Australia plate. There is evidence of this scripted drama where both India and Australia sink in both the mythology relayed by the Aboriginal elders and recent sinking in Australia. Quoting Nexus News Feed in a May article, recently the elders have been seeing the signs of the end of days. They say we have less than 2 years before the end of days. Quoting Hawkesbury, Looking Glass Bay is on the northern shore of Cowan Creek upstream of Baby Bay and opposite Cottage Point. Looking Glass Rock stands near the eastern entrance of the bay. Looking Glass Rock was presumed named because of its shape. Also, on the longest day, the rising sun illuminates the rock so that it shines like a mirror. There is a story that the local Aborigines believed that when the water rose to cover the rock, the white man would leave. Well, has this happened? Well, it started during a recent lifting of that plate. The pole shift 10,800 years ago was, per the Zetas, the time of the flood. This resulted in higher seas surrounding Australia. These cataclysmic times are recorded in the geology of the Earth. Geologists estimate the seas were 100 feet lower than today at that time, around 10,800 years ago. And the Aboriginal people of Australia remember. Quoting the Daily Mail, oral folklore tells how the Great Barrier Reef once formed part of the coastline of the northeast Queensland, while Port Phillip Bay in Victoria was once a rich place for hunting kangaroo and opossum. They say at this time sea levels rose as a result of the melting of the huge ice caps that covered much of the northern hemisphere around 10,500 years ago. The researchers now believe that these stories can constitute some of the oldest accurate oral histories in the world, passing through some 300 generations. Notice the dates. 3,600 years is the periodic passage of Nibiru, and 3 times that is the 10,800 years estimated to be the time of the Great Flood. So here we have geologists saying, 10,500 years ago, blah, blah, blah. It's off by 300 years, but, it's the same thing. We're talking about a passage at that time causing the Great Flood. Okay, so what's the past? What about the present? Like the inland flooding that Australia experienced in 2011. Was this from rain? That's what they all kept telling you, but it was way inland and it was seawater coming inland from a backwash up the rivers on the east coast of Australia due to Australia suddenly tilting. As India is plunged under the Himalayas, the Indo-Australia plate tilts so that the eastern edge near New Zealand rises temporarily before it sinks. And we had pictures of people rescuing the little joeys, and it was all saltwater down into the middle of Australia. The saltwater rushed. Was this just rainwater? Oh, hardly. It was described as seawater by nurseries finding their stock killed by the salt, and it flowed hundreds of miles inland into the Australia interior, where it sloshed around until it found a route to drain. Quoting ABC News at the time, Victorians are being warned that a massive moving inland sea is expected to threaten towns in the state's north and east and northwest for up to 10 more days. It is estimated the moving inland sea is 90 kilometers long and 40 kilometers wide. Communities in Victoria North include, I can't pronounce these, blah, blah, and blah, are now preparing for major flooding. Further downstream near the border with New South Wales, floodwaters are beginning to rise at Swan Hill, all saltwater. As India gets hammered under the Himalayas, Sumatra and Java are likewise pushed down under the curve of the plate, also housing Australia. This steady sinking in Indonesia is palpable today and can be seen where the sea is shallow. And by the way, that Bali quake I just reported on 2 days ago, boom, that's right in that area on Java. As the Zetas predicted, the 7 of 10 plate movements picked up the pace. Indonesia had lots of flooding and seawater inundation. An example is the inland flooding at Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This was not caused by rains, though this was the media cover-up. This was caused by the land sinking and seawater rushing in. This type of sloshing goes back and forth, so the seawater eventually returns to its basin, but temporarily it has sloshed inland. Simultaneous inland flooding in so many countries was reported, but though the media tried to suppress what was obviously a sinking land situation, since Bangkok was a prime tourist attraction, it forced its way into the news. The local media admitted that high tides and a flood from a sea level rise had been part of the problem. The flood maps show that the flooding was not in the inland lakes, but was an influx of seawater, and that did occur. Nibiru and the scripted drama of the plate movements caused by Nibiru are never admitted. This is a cover-up. We could go on and on about the cover-up, but essentially, the wealthy people who are on top of the pile now and want to stay there do not want you running and screaming through, failing to pay your credit cards, failing to pay your mortgages, leaving your jobs, going up into the hills and getting chickens and goats and learning how to garden, and not paying any attention to their edicts, considering money to be irrelevant, which it will be. Jewels and paintings and all the things that bonds, stocks and bonds, to be irrelevant, which it will be. And things like gardening tools, and seeds and chickens and goats to be relevant, which they will be. They don't want you there. They want you to be there taken by surprise, shocked at the changes, so that when they come out of their bunkers, they can be king of the hill and dictate to you as desperate slaves as to where they want you, because maybe they have a warehouse of food, and they'll feed you if you go out into the fields and do as they say. By the way, wear handcuffs and ankle bracelets or whatever else they want, implants. Quoting the Bangkok media, the water level was rising continuously because of a high tide, and from another, Ayutthaya province and the Fang River Basin was submerged by floodwaters in the sea level rise, and more that was overflowing their banks. So we did get admissions from the press in that area, but mostly it was shouted out, by, oh no, it's the rain, even when it was obviously seawater. Okay, South America roll. All the tilting and sinking in Asia allows the top of South America to roll to the west, into the Pacific. The South America continent is shaped like an ice cream cone, but is firmly nailed at Antarctica. Only the top part can move. The bump atop the South American plate slides over the Caribbean plate, pushing it down. Is there any evidence that this part of the scripted drama? A land bridge used to exist between Florida and Venezuela, and roads were visible under the water near the Bahamas. This can be seen today by the shallow water in many places in the Caribbean. Of all the evidence that South America is rolling and the Caribbean being pushed down, the appearance of beaches on the east and west coasts of South America are the most compelling. In August of 2017, beaches along South Brazil and Uruguay drained, while Chile experienced unexplained tsunami waves. This pattern has repeated many times. When South America rolls, it rips the island of Trinidad apart. This could be seen as a clear line across the island last February 2018 when a mud volcano emerged. This was a prediction of the Zetas that Trinidad would tear apart. As South America rolls, this pulls the Atlantic apart, destabilizing Africa, which pulls down away from Europe and rolls its top part to the east, widening the Red Sea and further ripping open the Rift Valley in eastern Africa. The Mediterranean used to be a swamp, but has been steadily sinking during its African rolls. Is there any evidence that the Mediterranean is affected during the periodic passage of Nibiru every 3,600 years? The Greek volcano island of Thera, now known as Santorini, blew in approximately 1,628 BC per radiocarbon dating. This certainly seems to be the 3,600-year period. Terra was immense, 4 to 5 times the size of Krakatoa, which blew in 1883. This was about the time of the Jewish Exodus reported in the Torah, the Book of Exodus, the Egyptian Kolbrin, and the Ipuwer papyrus. Historians estimate the Exodus to be 1,200 BC, but gaps in calendars exist that can account for hundreds of years. People were discombobulated. The Egyptian census stopped. Record-keeping stopped. It was a confused time. Slaves just walked away. Per the Kolbrin, the habitations of men collapsed upon those inside. The temples and palaces of the nobles were thrown down from their foundations. Men rose up against those in authority and fled from the cities to dwell in tents in the outlands. Egypt lacked great men to deal with the times. The slaves left. Pharaoh abandoned his hopes and fled into the wilderness. So clearly, something was going on, and for the Zetas, this was the pole shift time, the Jewish Exodus time. Heaving land in the African Rift Valley was caught on video on September of 2017. The Rift Valley, which is being steadily pulled apart, shows this process, and Kapala, the ripping, was documented on video. This was not caused by earthquakes, as no shaking can be seen in the video. Nor are the people watching this drama even alarmed, as they quietly stepped back out of the way. Apparently, this was an ongoing process and nothing unusual. This is all in my newsletters, by the way. I have all of this material covered in my newsletters. Just use the search engine. It'll pop right up. In April of 2018, giant cracks appeared in Kenya, showing the African roll progressing. But though this hits the local news, it is kept out of the international media. No one is to connect the dots and ask, why is this happening? The Great Eurasian Plate is pulled from Europe to Asia, a stress which the Zetas predict will ultimately rip a new inland bay up past Iran and then toward the Urals. Remember, this is in the opinion of the Zetas, but there are lots of signs this is in process. There are numerous signs of this tension already, including a methane explosion seen pre-dawn by commuters in the Urals in 2014. As the scripted drama compresses the Pacific and widens the Atlantic, much of Europe is pulled down as it loses support on the Atlantic side. This is recorded as land just under the water around the UK, which loses land at every pole shift. Land pulled down between the UK and Sweden is shown by tree stumps under the water and remains of villages too. Low tides expose these places, and there they are, tree stumps for no reason. Across the Atlantic in North America, another drama ensues. The North American continent has a flat top, thus cannot roll, but instead is pulled in a diagonal manner. This results in what is termed the New Madrid adjustment. This is in America's future, in our near future, based on all the quake swarms in Oklahoma and Connecticut and the booms along the seaway. The New Madrid adjustment, pending, will devastate the North American continent up along the Mississippi, under the seaway, and perhaps with some sympathetic quaking along the eastern seaboard. Until this adjustment occurs, North America experiences snapping gas and water mains, sinkholes, quake swarms, booms, and crevasses ripping across the desert. The St. Lawrence Seaway is tearing apart. This emerged in the news in December 2017 with a startling claim that Vermont had developed a volcano. But per the Zetas, this is just a thin place in the crust where the roiling magma is closer to the surface, which results in being pulled thin during the seaway spread. Quoting Forbes, this strange pool of hotter, less dense molten rock is upwelling beneath Vermont, western New Hampshire, and western Massachusetts. So, not a new volcano, just a thin place in the crust. Zetas have said where rivers flow, that's a thin place in the crust. Thus it is drooping. Thus it is lower. Thus water pools there. So there are thin. Underneath, it's as mountainous as we have mountains and ridges underneath the crust, just as we do above, but we just can't see them. And this is in the opinion of the Zetas in their description. Okay, during the hour of the pole shift, the scripted drama really takes the stage, but the outcome is predictable. India sinks, driven under the waves, and the western two-thirds of Australia likewise sinks. Now notice, the hour of the pole shift, this is a Zeta Talk prediction. It has not yet happened. It is an opinion. Much of Indonesia is washed away by the floods from the compressing Pacific. As the North Pole of Earth is pushed away by the passing Nibiru, the globe is pulled upward so that the bulge of Brazil is placed at the top where the North Pole will resume. As this crustal slip stops, the momentum crushes Central America and the Caribbean between the North and South American plates. Is there evidence that such crustal shifts occur and have occurred in the past? Plenty. Take, for instance, the flash frozen mammoths found on Wrangel Island and elsewhere within the Arctic Circle. These were elephants, herbivores, and hardly eat ice and snow. Frozen mammoths just died out an estimated 3,700 years ago on Wrangel Island, and are estimated to have arrived there approximately 7,400 years ago. Both are increments of 3,600. To quote GeoCities, Wrangel Island is 120 miles off the coast of Siberia. Fossil remains of this 6-foot-tall, 2-ton woolly mammoths found there have been carbon dated to only 3,700 years ago. The carbon dating of the fossil remains indicates the mammoths lived on Wrangel Island from 7,390 before the present. Potsdam University in Germany cites a tilt of the globe some 3,600 years ago, quoting Climate Arc. The great grasslands of North Africa turned to desert a few thousand years ago. 4,000 to 3,600 years ago, according to a paper published today by the journal Geophysical Research Letters. Germany's Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research analyzed computer models of climate over the past several thousand years. They concluded that the change to today's desert climate in the Sahara was triggered by changes in the Earth's orbit and the tilt of Earth's axis. End of the quote. Why does Greenland have so much ice when it's not the North Pole? Greenland is the second largest ice sheet after Antarctica. If Wrangel Island was pulled into the Arctic and the Sahara climate changed 3,600 or so years ago, was Greenland the last North Pole? As the Earth wobble gets more extreme and obvious, and Nibiru in the skies is virtually announcing itself, the scripted drama may likewise begin to do its dance. And I think Bali is the start. Yeah, you can hear the drum roll and the trumpets. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Why do the Zetas predict that the bulge of Brazil will be pulled up to become the new North Pole? This is part of the scripted drama due to the magnetized, hardened lava along the Atlantic Ridge. As the Atlantic has been pulled apart over the ages from the solid hunk of land that was Pangea, iron-rich lava has hardened, making the ridge a type of magnet. This is gripped by the approaching Nibiru during the last weeks, thus the rotation stoppage just before the crustal shift. This is recorded in mythology and the Bible as the long day and long night. Quoting Joshua 10:11-14. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hastened not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened to the voice of a man. Well, it was more than a day. The Zetas say that people lose track of time. I mean, your sundials are not working, and they didn't have clocks back then either. So they think, but it's really 5.9 days. The Zetas have estimated that the entire rotation stoppage will be 5.9 days. This is during the last weeks when you should be in your safe location. You should have a mechanical watch or clock. You should have a clock watcher to say how many days, 5.9. You should be in a trench rather than in your house, which can fall on you. Or, not standing up where the hurricane force winds can knock you over or hit you with stuff. Be in a shallow trench, lay down. You won't be hurt. And that's their recommendation. You don't need money for this. And the rich that are down in their bunkers, they will be trapped. Their escalators and elevators or whatever are going to be crushed, and it may fill with a horrible death when you think about it, but that's what they get for not telling you the truth about what's coming. Quoting Velikovsky, his book, Worlds in Collision, we go to the shelf where the books stand with the historical traditions of the Aboriginals of Central America. The sailors of Columbus and Cortez, arriving in America, found there literate peoples who had books of their own. In the Mexican annals of Xochitlan, written by Nahua Indians, it is related that during a cosmic catastrophe that occurred in the remote past, the night did not end for a long time. Can the magma along the Atlantic Ridge really be that strong? Strong enough to bring down Air France 447 in 2009. All the electronics on Air France 447 were blown, one by one, as was recorded by automated communications with land. This was an electromagnetic pulse due to Air France 447 being caught between Nibiru and the magnetized ridge. The cover-up over Nibiru until the need for travel industry to not lose profits forced an excuse that the pilot encountered bad weather. The poor pilots, they are always demonized. Either that or they're committing suicide. They never admit electromagnetic pulse, no matter how much proof there is, because heaven forbid you would stop flying to Disneyland or wherever instead of spending your money on gardening tools and seeds and chickens and goats. All right, the Atlantic Ridge, quoting Reuters, 4 hours into the flight, the plane encountered heavy turbulence. 15 minutes later, now a long way out to sea, it transmitted an automated signal indicating the plane was in serious trouble. A succession of a dozen technical messages showed that several electrical systems had broken down. Most ominously, the pressurized system, a totally unprecedented situation in the plane. Well, pressurized system, oops, no oxygen, oops, the pilot, everybody passes out. Another biggie was MH370, Malaysian, and that was also electromagnetic pulse. The pilot was dead. Everyone on board was passed out, and the plane was operating on some half their automated pilot, of which were in several different computers on, and followed routes that were already programmed in from past flights, and headed out into the Indian Oceans and wandered around like a headless chicken until it went down somewhere near Australia. They don't want you to know the truth. MH370 appears every now and then like a dead body. Oh, we've found it. It was repainted, and now it, ta-da, latest garbage story. It's not true. It was electromagnetic pulse. In the opinion of the Zetas, the crustal shift pending during this next passage of Nibiru will involve slowing the rotation of Earth into a long day, long night situation. Then as Nibiru approaches, pointing its north pole directly at the Earth, it grips the south pole of Earth. Its magnets like to align end to end, and that's why this happens, because it will grip the magnetized Atlantic Rift, and pull it up. Because our North Pole is trying to evade the North Pole of Nibiru, is what it amounts to. And that's causing the wobble that we have ongoing daily, too. Our North Pole is trying to evade the North Pole of Nibiru. Passing overhead, Nibiru then drags its south, the Earth up, thus the bulge of Brazil being moved to where the North Pole of Earth currently resides. After the passage, the core of Earth moves about, resettles, into the usual magnetic alignment with North Pole up, South Pole down. But the crust stays where it has been moved. It's all a scripted drama. So just to go through the last weeks, 7.3 weeks. First we'll have an extreme wobble, where the sun may seem to, it flops over to the left, flops over to the right. Then we go into the 3 days of darkness. And this is written in the Bible all over the place. 3 days of, but the momentum of having our North Pole pushed away continues until we're almost upside down, and it takes a little while, a few days, for that to come back up. The Bible only talks 3 days of darkness, but the Muslim religion in the Hadith talks about 6 days of sunrise west, which according to the Zetas is all part of that, going too far and then rightening itself up. Okay, now people are in panic, but the globe is slowly stopping rotation. 18 days goes by as it slowly, days are longer and longer, and finally it stops, and we're at the Atlantic Rift facing the oncoming Nibiru, which by now is looking like a huge writhing dragon up there. So 5.9 days, set your clocks, rotation stoppage, then the hour of the shift happens very rapidly, grabs the bulge of Brazil, shoves it up to the top. Basically, that's because the North Pole is being pushed away. And the Zetas say it will seem like hurricane force winds everywhere because the atmosphere doesn't want to move. Big waves, 500 feet high. This is not waves so much as it is a high tide. The water just keeps rising and rising and rising, and up to 600 feet, where there's tidal bore. So don't be along the coastlines. And then sloshing back to the other side of the ocean and slosh, slosh, slosh until finally all that settles. So when you lay down in your trench, you will feel jiggling. You will see the moon or whatever is overhead or stars move rapidly across the sky, 90-degree shift according to the Zetas. Then it all stops. Then rotation starts again pretty quickly, and everybody has a different climate. You want to know about the aftertime? Go to the Zeta Talk website and read your new climate, the new geography. Just use the search engine, type in new geography, boom, you'll be there. And that's what I have prepared for today, Andre.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, we have discussed this before on previous episodes of the 7 of 10 and especially New Madrid and what's happening there. I know that just this past week there's been an uptick in larger earthquakes worldwide, especially with the Bali quake and the quake swarm. That, what's the difference between 6.9 and 7.0? I mean, the Zetas, we add 2.0 to everything because everything's being dumbed down. But, the USGS is known, and we've documented here on this show as well as through Zeta Talk throughout the years, that it's not, they're making it, it's all about statistics. So if you take it from 7.0 to 6.9 on the magnitude of the so-called Richter scale, it's not called that anymore, but it changes the stats so it looks different over time. But at the same time, these quakes that are happening are already being downgraded to begin with.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they just say it's a 4? Well, you can't, because there's too much damage, right? I mean, the evidence of it a lot of the times is overwhelmingly that it's large earthquake. But it's like,
that's obvious.
Doesn't this?
Yeah, we've actually I've done a newsletter feature on that. And I think we've covered it here too, on USA EBN, where you can see how often they do that. They drop it down just down, so it's in the next category, and statistically this shows up. I mean, it's a huge percentage of the time they do this. Another way to determine what the real magnitude is the scope affected, because magnitude is not just the strength of the jolt, but also how vast the region affected that felt that jolt is.
Right.
And they lie about that to some degree too. But if you dig, you can find that, and you can see how they are dumbing it down, and then they try to claim, all this business about it has to be, if big buildings fall down, then it's an 8 or something like that. But it's like played with all, and if it's out in the ocean somewhere, they drop it completely. People have actually sat watching the earthquake statistics roll by and seen them go beep, 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 beep. The deletions happening real time in front of their eyes. And this is all, and ever since 2003, when Nibiru entered our inner solar system, that kind of behavior started and has been tracked. So we know it's just not the truth. We're not. Instead, you hear about, here's this Mali person out there I mean, I'm sorry that some 19-year-old girl went missing, but or whatever she was. But the point is, how come we don't hear about Nibiru and what's going to be happening? People are not going to have anything to eat. They're going to, if they grab themselves and manage to float and swim or whatever up to a hill, now what? I mean, isn't that more important than one single, person missing? They're not talking about what's most critical at all. Even politics, this is all just noise. The real issue is the coming passage and what you should do to help each other and help yourself and help your family, etc., and what this means for you, not how comfortable the wealthy are or the people the powers that be, as they're called. Yeah.
Right. I think, too, for our listeners and the people that follow this directly, they're pretty much on top of it. They know where to get their information. They either go to Zeta Talk or Pole Shifting, or they know how to dig through the feeds on, say, the earthquake monitors, go to the European feed, cross-check, that sort of thing. But I think that also with what's happening in the media recently, in the past couple of weeks, that people are waking up to, maybe the mainstream media is what everybody says it is. It's a paid mockingbird, if you will, of the deep state or cabal, call them whatever you want, the people that are running things behind the scenes. You go to CNN or what have you, or any of these outlets, and it's all the same thing, and they're not talking about what's actually going on. And people are waking up to that. And maybe it's a little bit of Q in there too, or just people waking up in general. But if you as a news user, as a person trying to find the truth, let's say, it's best to always get more than two sources on things, and if they're saying the same thing, it's the same talking point, so you got to dig further. And secondly, just up your level of discernment. If it seems weird, dig into it, or just disregard it and move on. If it doesn't resonate with you as the truth, it probably isn't. Use your gut, This has been going on for eons, where the powers that be or what have you have been lying to you to keep you in line. It's nothing new. It's just they have more power now because of the media, and everybody's got their phones out, and you can just directly sell the message, the propaganda of nothing's happening here, nothing to see here, move along.
Yeah, people are increasingly relying on the internet, and actually the popularity of Q shows that. That's an internet. He doesn't disseminate on Twitter. He actually has a website very tightly controlled, so that only Q can post there, or what he approves to be posted there. And that shows you how the explosion of this information can happen. This terrifies what we call the powers that be, or the New World Order, or whatever. It goes by many different names: the cabal, Bush, Hillary, Soros cabal, and however you want to describe it. But they definitely, now Russia is much more open, and that's one reason it's so demonized. The Patriarch Kirill said you'd have to be blind not to know that we're in the end times that the prophet John spoke of in the book of Revelations. Well, he said we're in the end times, and they had an astronomer that said a screaming piece of which everybody was saying, oh, that's an asteroid that flew through, and bolide or whatever, and he said no, it was something in the trash in the tail of Nibiru. Well then apparently Nibiru is here already, and then they had a meteorologist that was saying it's not climate change, it's a tilt of the globe that is causing, which the Inuit Indians will tell you, because they've been for years been saying too much sun, too much sunlight in the Arctic. This is not normal. And that got on PBS before I think PBS got smacked around and told to shut up. So, you have, it's reached the point where the pimple is about to burst. You can just feel it. And where it's going from here, I'm not sure. But if the major media, if it's the ownership of CNN and MSNBC, and some of these, and some are more truthful than others, so I don't know where this is going to go or what's going to happen. Very interesting times, but we are in the thick of a war for the truth, folks. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, it's bigger than you think, and then when you dig into it farther, then you're like, you want to know the truth for real. Yeah. Not just for vengeance or anything to get people. Things will happen to those who've lied and cheated over the years. It's just karma that way. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just get the truth out to the people that are trying to ask questions and want to know what to do. And like you said, the pole shift in general, if you're off the coastlines and in your safe location and down in that trench because of the flying debris and falling buildings and what have you, that you'll be okay. It's the after time that's going to be tough. It's like that's when you use the seeds that you've been saving, and you're at a plot of land that's got a spring or clean water, so you don't have to worry about that so much. You can grow crops and farm and get with your community. If your community is just a family, that's fine. If it's just a couple people, or if it's 20 people, that's great. But that's why we've kind of put this all on and documented it over the years, is to get it into the psyche of people that you can survive this sort of thing. That's why we're here. It's not to be the fear porn or anything else.
Yeah, you can make windmills out of car parts. All you need is an alternator, and DC, a direct current rather than AC. We had one wonderful episode here on the USA EBN is vitamins in nature. Eat weeds and bugs. You have all your vitamins. Don't worry about that vitamin bottle emptying. Right. You can survive on, like duckweed, the green stuff floating on top of marshes. That has protein. It's fully edible. So is kudzu. It's a member of the pea plant, and it has, tubers, and their leaves can be fed to dairy cows. Now you got milk. You can eat the leaves yourself.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed at you think, oh, I can't grow gardens. Well, and drive down the highway, and it's to the right and to the left of you. The weeds nature provides, and bugs will grow. They grow in dead stuff.